Yeah, perfect.
All right, great. We can keep going. I don't remember. What did you ask me? What did you say? Oh,
The startup world, the startup
startup
world.
world. Yeah. What about it?
So you grew up in this, right? Um, you know, I never asked you this question because we've spoken a few times. It's all about business and all just the usual stuff we talk about. But I've never asked you how was it growing up in this space as opposed to a lot of like I came from the shipping side. I grew up in India. I never knew about startup work, but my first job was a startup job. Um, I almost did not take that job, but looking back, that was the best decision of my life. It changed the way I always think. I don't think in terms of like a huge organization. I only think about that startup mindset. So that was my world. Right for you, on top of that, freight was your world.
Yeah. I mean, it was the only thing I ever knew. Um, I'm trying to think of a way to compare it, but I don't know if I can. What I can say is, so I was 16 when Coyote was started. So it was founded in April of 2006. So I was 16 then. My first day was December 26th, I think, of that year. It was my Christmas break. And, I sat down next to Tim King and heard him make a few calls to carriers. And then I tried to do the same thing. And it was this, back then there weren't a ton of people. It was 30 or 40 people maybe, but it was always something going on. I mean, like the beauty of the startup is how it's like there's always something kind of broken that you just live with. And like it's a beautiful aspect of it. Where like you're just like, yeah, we're a startup. The fax machine is a little funky. Like when we would send rate cons, we had to like go to the fax machine, and there was always something kind of going on there. And I just remember that aspect of it, and like I don't know why there's something comforting about a startup environment where there's always something kind of broken. I don't know, but I do remember I had this like unimaginable confidence in my father and the business they were building. I just remember when I was 18, so the business was now just 2 years old. I don't know that the writing was on the wall yet that this was going to be what it would become. But for me, I had this belief that it was, because I remember when I went to school that year as a freshman, and, I was just talking to the guys who I'd become friends with. And I was like, man, you guys should see this company my dad started. Like, it's going to be crazy. Like, they're Coyote Logistics. And nobody, if you're not in it, you don't know it, especially 18 years old. People have no idea what the hell I was talking about. But there was just this like incredible belief. And I don't know why. I think it had to do with the energy of the place and just the feeling. Like, people were so bought in. There was so much passion. And passion takes you so far. When you have people who are passionate about something, there's no problem we can't really solve, I think. Like, meaning, I mean, I'm sure there are some problems we can't solve, but in business, like most of the problems that we will tackle, we are capable of solving with enough grit, passion, know-how, and technological support, I'm sure. I don't know. Is this resonating?
It is absolutely. It is. Throughout my journey, I like this, and I'm going to use this. I'm a big analogy guy. Um, the movie Finding Nemo,
Great movie.
when Nemo was trying to escape the water tank, and everybody says you can't do it. To everybody believes in him and helps him get out. And to me, a startup is like that. I mean, when you're a founder of a company, the first time you talk about an idea, not everybody believes that this can happen. I mean, when I started TruckerTools many moons ago, there were 10 million smartphones in the overall country, um, not just in the trucking space, overall country. 8 million were
What
Blackberries,
year is
2
this?
million. This was 2009.
Okay. Taking us back.
So very back, right? So I did not even have an iPhone. I had a BlackBerry. And I told the guy I had to run our technology, I said, can I borrow your phone? I'm going to tell you how to build an app in this. And I'm going to show it to you on your phone. And, it's all like, I mean, having that, right? I told him, I know you probably think I'm crazy talking about all of this, but I truly believe this is how it's going to happen. When you start predicting things like that and one or two things happen, people will buy into it. That's a faith that they develop, right? At I'm going to use that as one of long example because I've seen it from start to finish. Unlike all other startups where I have probably joined a little late, and my current one is just in the beginning stages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we've done so many things as a first. We were the first app in the whole industry, not just in our industry, but probably the top 10, 15 app in the App Store that never required you to sign in. It automatically recognized you. And I told our team at that time, I said, I need you to come up with a unique way to identify this. In the funny thing is, as a startup, you're creating solutions that don't make any sense. Like you said about the printer thing, right? Uh, they used the location of the phone, some IP address, time of the device, whatever the unique key. And as they were building this, I told them in another 6 months, Apple and Google are going to release their building block. We're going to replace that with that. But you just have to. It's like um, the best example I can see is it's like you have a bunch of engineers in the plane trying to build that plane and design that plane while you're flying that and saying, I need a little bit more power on the right hand side, just put a new motor.
Yep.
Right. It's like that. A startup is such a, if you like it, there is nothing in this world that can come close to that, in my view, in terms of satisfaction.
100%. 100%. The flying the plane while you're building an analogy never gets old to me because it so perfectly encapsulates there are a lot of analogies you can use to building a business, I'm sure. The reason I like the flying the plane while you're, I'm sorry, building the plane while you're in the air flying it analogy is because I think it's the only one that perfectly encapsulates the mindset that you have when you're starting building a startup. Because imagine for a second, you are flying a plane while it's being built in the air. The amount of stress and chaos you would feel sitting there, with your hands on the steering, whatever the hell they've got to fly the thing. While you've got engineers back there, banging away, making stuff happen, you'd be terrified. You'd be stressed out of your mind. And that reminds me of the feeling I had for much of the first few years of Molo. So, I mean, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you're the other stress is it's not a truck or something else being built on the road because you could pull it over, get it built. When you're flying the plane, there is nothing you can't pull over, right? I mean, it's a startup is like that. You can't stop.
Yeah, no timeouts.
Once you take a, yeah, you're not pausing for a second. You're doing 10 things at the same time, and in the middle of the night, if customer has a problem, I still have one, or in my previous life at TruckerTools, I had one customer who would call me 3 or 4 in the morning. Something breaks up, they'll call me immediately because we have our phone system that would bounce off, and I'm the last person to get that.
Mm-hmm.
And they figured out, I'm not going to wait for all of this. I'm going to just call his cell phone number. And that's a good thing and a bad thing because we know that something's broken, needs to be fixed. But the bad part is my wife saying, well, Prasad, you got to go into the other room and can't speak while you're sitting in the bed.
100%. 100%. All right, let's start the show. I like
Yes.
this. We're going to have fun today, Prasad. All right. Housekeeping. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Freight Pod. I'm your host, Andrew Silver. You just got a couple minutes of Prasad and I catching up, talking business, talking startups. I'm joined today by Prasad Gollapalli. Did I say that right?
Yep, yep.
Awesome. And before we jump into him and his journey, let's just give a quick word to our sponsors, Rapido Solutions Group, founded by Danny Frisco and Roberto Acaza, two guys that I have known for a very long time, worked with, and have a ton of trust and confidence in the business they're building. Rapido connects logistics and supply chain organizations in North America with the best nearshore talent to scale efficiently, operate on par with US-based teams, and deliver superior customer service. They work with companies on all sides of the industry, whether you're a broker, a carrier, a logistics software company, whatever it may be. These guys can build out teams to support the roles you need, be it customer and carrier sales and support, back office admin, technology services. The team at Rapido, they know logistics, they know people. They've got a great business. So shout out to them. And with that, let's get this show on the road. All right, sir. Let's start somewhere easy. How'd you get into freight?
And before I get into that, Andrew, thank you for having me on this. I've been a good. I've enjoyed your podcast before. Every time you do a podcast with an amazing guest, I would send you a note, enjoying how well the conversation went. And the part that I truly like is there's no script on this. I mean, it's just pouring out what you know, what you think, nuggets of wisdom other people have done, and so I'm truly honored to be here. So thank you.
Well, very deserving to be here. So you're on. You've built a great business in TruckerTools. I had your successor on, and now you've got another great business you're building, which I'm excited to dig into with Q'd. So, floor's yours. Go ahead. How'd we get here?
Thank you. And so it was an accidental journey for me to get in. I was in a shipping. I was with a ship registry, second largest ship registry, and I got the opportunity to join GetLoaded in their leadership team many moons ago, and I took the job. After taking the job, I called the president and I said, I have second thoughts about this. I have to move to Richmond, which I was reluctant, and I said,
Where were you living?
Northern Virginia.
Okay.
So not far from Richmond, a couple of hours, but still, I was reluctant. I was like, what did I do? What did I just do? I got in trucking. I don't know this pace. And when I started in trucking, I sat through the training class. I had to learn from van, reefer, flatbed. I've started from ground zero. Boy, it was looking back, probably the best decision of my life. I truly got to see how busy freight can be. Like, I mean, that you get into the office, there's never a dull moment. There's something happening, and we were back then. We were trying to we were competing with the D80 and truck stop at that time, and trying to really own that space, or build up the company to for an exit. Was very exciting, and that constant, I'd say, problem solving, constant firefighting was kept me here. And looking back, after a few turns, this has been a great journey.
So this is, I think, Get Loaded is a good barometer of someone's tenure in the space. When you say get loaded to someone, if they don't know what you're talking about, they are a newer broker. And it's been gone for a while, but Get Loaded was an 06, 07 top load board. Talk about that. Talk about what that business was a little bit, because I think that much of the audience may have no idea what Get Loaded was.
No, what you said is right. Only few people, when you say get loaded, they're like, oh, that was, I remember that.
Yeah.
I still have some get loaded merchandise T-shirts.
That stuff's got to be
lost
valuable
them.
today.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't believe the T-shirts lasted longer than the brand.
Happens sometimes.
That's a good one, right? That said, back in internet era, get loaded, and then of course Truckstop did the same thing, was create this load matching portals where drivers would, especially owner operators, deliver the load, pull their truck in a rest area or a truck stop, open up their laptop, or call GetLoaded office and say, "Hey, I'm in Chicago. I need a load going back to Atlanta." And someone in our call center would log into our portal, search, or if they open up their laptop, they can search. And then they get the broker's name, phone numbers, call those brokers for those loads and book those loads. It was very chaotic, but it was the best solution back in those days. You sit there and you look at this. My famous example in the training class, the first day was my trainer. She said, "Okay, let me tell you how a trucker would search this. Say he is looking for a load going from Kissimmee, Florida," and she started typing Kissimmee. And I said, "Dana, time out. How do one know how to spell Kissimmee? Because I don't know."
Double S, double M,
And
double E.
yeah, exactly right. That led us into, my background has been product management, product strategy. So that led us into pre-filling, as you type, people pre-fill. Of course, obviously nowadays these are all there. But it was interesting to see how archaic the process was.
And yet still back then, it being, today we look at it and say that's incredibly archaic. I actually didn't know. I just learned something new. I didn't know that part of Get Loaded was a carrier could actually call into your office and say, put me a truck in this location, and then your call center would do it for them. Because I just saw the screen that said, "Hey, there's a truck in Richmond that wants to go to Chicago." I assumed that he was sitting at his laptop, but it does kind of speak to how far back we're going into the kind of origination of the load board. Um,
It is. And there are a lot of things that, in our journey, we didn't come here overnight, right? I mean, there are a lot of turns, a lot of people, smart people pushed this industry in this direction. But back then, there was enormous data. I mean, we would get 150, 200,000 loads every day flowing into our system. And there were times where our systems could not handle that load because of the complexity. Not the loads, but the searches, right, happening. We had about 50,000 carriers back then. Nowadays, if you tell someone 50,000 carriers, they're like, "Okay, yeah, our systems can handle that."
yep.
But back then, it was hard.
And Get Loaded was acquired in 2008 by DAT, correct?
Yep, 2 weeks. This is 2 weeks right before the economy started tanking.
Oh, wow. So do you think if that deal hadn't closed, it never would have closed?
Wouldn't wouldn't have closed. At least in my viewpoint, it
Yeah.
wouldn't have closed because obviously at this point it's all history, right? But DAT paid us a premium at that point to buy us out. We were really denting into their market.
Was that what it was? They were worried you guys were becoming a fierce competitor that could displace
Yeah,
them,
yeah,
and they just
yeah,
wanted to stifle that. Because it wasn't like
yeah.
they took your technology or anything. I mean, Get Loaded disappeared after that, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Just
It was because we were so, customers like Coyote, Landstar, all these guys were paying us what 75 or I think $150 monthly. Well,
that's
you know how much DAT charges, so I'm not going to talk about that. But so it was a hard sell for them, and but it's the innovation, right? I mean, it's a classic example of when things change, right? I mean, when PCs to internet came, it's going to level the field. So new entrants can come in and really challenge an existing player. Likewise, in 2009, when I started TruckerTools, smartphone apps became open to public, and that was my cue. I knew it's going to level field the market for us. A startup can come and really challenge an existing player. So at TruckerTools, when I started TruckerTools, the ultimate idea is to really do the freight matching, which we did. And but do it using the data. Because, going back, every conversation I had with our customers and our team back at GetLoaded, it all came down to, gee, if we have a computer on the driver and know exactly all his, we could track him. We know where he is going to be before he gets there, and we can feed a load rather than him calling us or looking for a
Yeah,
store.
proactive.
That is, that was, in today's world, when you talk about digital freight matching, that is the original digital freight matching idea. So with that idea, when smartphones became popular, I said, okay, this is my cue. I have an opportunity waiting. I mean, either take this or wait for another change like this in my life. So I took the opportunity, started TruckerTools. And the other part, a lot of people, who you've been a seasoned guy, so you know this. In our industry, over 95% of the freight is moved by the small guys. And if they're the most fragmented, if you can put all of them on one platform, that's it. Bingo. No one can do anything from that point onwards to you. You can control everything, like meaning you can really give them the best freight. The efficiencies are all driven from that point. So that was my goal with TruckerTools. Just basically built a platform where aggregating that long tail of carriers. So started with an app that helps them with fuel, then slowly added up.
So take me back there. For one, actually, I want to make this comment just 'cause I think it's really interesting. DAT had this competitor that was starting to eat into its market share in GetLoaded. And this is 2009. And they're realizing that this competitor is charging a fraction of what they are for a very similar service. And it seems like they had two options. They could either lower their price to be competitive with you or buy you and get you out of the market so they can keep charging what they want to charge. Feels like they picked the latter. And DAT is such an interesting business, but we're not gonna we won't say anything more than that. And we'll pivot now to TruckerTools. So from what I understand, DAT was acquired. I'm sorry, GetLoaded was acquired. You were a director of product at that point, or product management.
Yes.
Talk to me about the notion of becoming a CEO, of starting a company on your own. I mean, you had only been at GetLoaded in the trucking industry for 2-ish years. I mean, what made you the guy to start the next big successful business in our space?
Um, I've always been an entrepreneur in my head. I worked for startups before, right? So I've closely, um, had the opportunity to see what it takes to run this. And more importantly, I learned two things in life with being in these startups. One is, if you miss on an opportunity, you can't just dwell on it because the opportunity is gone. So when the opportunity knocks on or opens up, you have to take advantage. Two, you're going to make mistakes no matter what, right? I mean, there's going to be so many mistakes in a small startup. You can't dwell on it. You have to move forward with it. Startups probably provide the biggest opportunity for strategy, and that's what I truly like. I did so in my previous, before all of this, I did my MBA in strategy and entrepreneurship. That's the only time I felt at home. I have two degrees from in engineering, computer science, undergrad and a master's, only to know that I'm not an engineer. My dad's an engineer. My brother is an engineer. They're true engineers. They love engineering side of it. I like to. I'm very comfortable in gray area. So all of that culminated to the fact that I knew there's going to be an opportunity when the smartphones became available. So it was for me either take that, or I mean DAT has been very good, very nice to me. They invited me. I felt like I could be there forever. If you ever meet anyone from DAT, they
Oh,
are
great.
lifetime DAT folks,
Yeah.
right? Good. I mean, they're nice people, but they also are very transparent. They said, "Well, Prasad, don't get excited here. We don't do any innovation." So I mean, those folks are gone now, so I'm saying this with a grain of salt, but we don't move fast, is what they said. I wanted to move fast and I wanted to do something. So I took a chance. That was a risk too, right? Like you said, I haven't been a CEO before, but I took a chance on that.
So talk to me about, as you're starting this company, it's your first company you've started. You're the CEO of TruckerTools. It's brand new business. Talk to me about how you thought about the strategy. How did you think about building your first product? How did you think about building a team? Take me back as well as you can remember to 2009 as you're starting this venture. What was the problem you were going to solve? And why was Trucker Tools the right solution to solve it?
The problem was, um, I felt like the load boards are archaic. As much as modern they were at that time, in my head, they were still archaic for the same reasons that we just discussed. Um, so, proactively feeding loads to these small carriers, even before they deliver their current load, is the way to go because there's no delay in between, right? And two, you're getting ducks in line, right? So, better loads. Other number is if you look at an owner operator with one truck, this was back at GetLoaded time, and you ask him how many loads he moves a month. If he moves 12 or higher, he's going to make more money. If he moves 8 or less, he's losing money. So it's between 8 and 12 is their sweet spot. Usually, they try to push it to 12. And my thought, I said, could I move it to? Could I add one or two extra loads for a guy like that? That was as simple as it is, right? Two additional loads for an owner operator with one truck, himself driving the truck, would change the landscape so much because we're getting more out of that truck first of all, but we are making him popular. Now, I mean, today we are seeing the bloodbath, right? Small carriers leaving. Back in 2008, it was exactly the same situation. Most of the owner operators canceled at the same time. So that it was a recession, and I felt like that was a perfect time to start a company. If you're going to start a company, it has to be a recession. So
Certainly good
it's
to
a
start from a
perfect.
low. You start from a low bar at that point.
Exactly. Everything is going to be cheap except for money, which I knew I'm very tight with money. Um, I don't like to spend money at all. In a startup, it's the easiest way to lose.
The easiest way to what?
Is easiest way to lose the
To lose the
business
business is to overspend.
is startup. Spend as much money as you can, which is the worst way.
So be frugal. That's a good point. Let me ask you this: what are a couple other kind of nuances of startup world that you think strategically were really valuable for you, like from a strategic kind of process thought process, like as a leader or as you're running it, like what are the things that were really important to you that you think contributed to the success of the business and the growth?
So you need a person to run the technology very good, right? There has to be one person who knows technology in and out. You need one person
And
who
was
can
that
sell.
was not you in this case? You were finding someone else to do that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good that I found someone else rather than me. I would have been the worst programmer if I had tried to do it. Um, so the guy who ran our technology, Morali, he and I we went to high school together in India. So when I called him, I mean, he's the one with the iPhone, and I'm not the one with the iPhone. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, that's good reason for me to hire him. So he came on board and managed that. So you also need somebody with amazing sales ability. That's an extremely important thing. So for a startup, you could start with two people, one technology, one business person sales.
Yep.
So the other person was me. I don't know about my sales ability or anything, but I know I can because, like you said earlier, I had this passion. This is going to happen no matter what in my head. I figured this out. Like, if I can get all the small carriers on one platform, we're going to own this and really revolutionize the DFM. So with that, we were able to sell better. Most of our customers became my friends, good friends, partners, and mentors. Everything, right? I mean, today, um, everything that I have done and um, was able to achieve was because of the amazing group of customers. And um, they carried me on their shoulders for years. I don't know what I did in my life to deserve that, but they are my true guardian angels.
Well, talk to me a little bit about that. Talk to me about what it's like to be. So I agree. I think that as CEO, especially of a business that's providing a service to customers, I think the most valuable use of your time is spent with customers and understanding what's working for them. What are they happy about? What aren't they happy about? What are they seeing elsewhere that they're preferring to what I'm giving them? Like keeping that pulse as the CEO arms you so well to deal with all the other challenges in your business. I mean, I know how to talk to my people if I know what my customers are feeling. When I talked about giving those speeches, oftentimes the content of the speech was a product of a conversation I had had with a shipper before. And them telling me about what an exceptional job my team was doing communicating with them became the focal point of the conversation to say, if we communicate with everyone the way we're communicating with this company, we'll be 10 times bigger, and that'll allow us to promote 100 more of you and pay out 100 times more commissions and all the things that you want in your life. So just talk a little bit from your perspective of like those relationships and like how you use them to improve the business and such.
It is. I'm trying to find the best analogy here because people have used this. We are in a marriage with our customers. We are partners, right? Equal partners in a relationship. Together we make the decision. But you can't make where the product goes without their input. And oftentimes they themselves may not know it. Like if you ask someone 5 years from now where their business is going to be, they probably don't know. It's a blank, very vague idea. Today, tomorrow, next week, next quarter, they have an idea. So they know what's coming up next quarter. They're going to tell you that. So that means you have a quarter to build that part. So and another famous thing I'll share with you is when I got our technology head, I told him, I want you to build this app, but it doesn't need to work beyond a year. That's what I said.
Okay.
So,
Explain that to me.
um, so what I meant by that is you don't want to build something that has to last forever. An amazing engineer's failure point is build me something that will last forever, then that person goes crazy, try to make it real complex. As opposed to, I need it to work for an year to year and a half. Because new technology is going to come, new business requirements are going to come. So whatever you build, you have to rebuild, rebuild. In a startup world, a lot of things have to be rebuilt. So there's no point in like trying to make it perfect, but good enough. All the time it's good enough to do something. You take, for example, Amazon. If you saw their first version back in 90s, it was a horrible website trying to sell books, but today they're selling everything, not just books alone. So, I mean, if they thought about all of this back then, they would never ever see the daylight. Um, but they themselves don't know that they're going to be selling all of this. But us as customers, we push them to be selling more. And that is what our customers do to us. They tell us exactly where to go. So you can build, going back to our analogy of the plane, they are sitting right next to you in the cockpit of that plane
Mm-hmm.
and telling our engineers how the plane should be. But
So it's what's really interesting, and that I'm a little bit hung up on. I appreciate you sharing all of that because I've never thought about it through that lens of building technology that will be good for a year and a half. knowing that you're going to have to rebuild it for the future, whatever the future holds. And that's something that I struggle with because I don't know if it's just the way my brain's wired, where I'm always like, well, in 3 years, we're going to need to be able to do this. And it's maybe that's a future problem that you deal with then. But especially as I look at today's environment, right? So in my world, I'm sitting on a non-compete. I can't do brokerage. And I've had a lot of people ask me if I'd be willing to start one of these AI companies. And I don't know shit about AI. But I'm going to learn maybe a little bit. But my point is, I'm not the technologist. I wouldn't be the technologist on any team. I could do the other role, the sales role, but and I get why these companies that want to get into the AI space, whether it's as we talk about Qt or it's the Happy Robot FleetWorks concept of the AI calls, inbound calls and whatnot. I think it's really interesting. But the thing I'm worried about is look at how far this technology is advanced in 1 year. Imagine where it'll be a year from now. Like nothing that we're building today will be what we'll be using in a year. So that's where I keep getting stuck. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to commit to that because, for one, I don't even understand the technology we'll be using effectively today for the next year. But we're gonna have to build something next year that's someone's gonna new come in and you get what I'm saying?
You're right. And the way I would look at this is it's it's one quarter at a time, one play at a time. I'm a big football guy. So you would have to look at it. You can draw a play, two plays down. Like meaning, let's say I'm the quarterback. I got the ball now. We're at 10-yard line on our side. We got 90 yards to go. So you can plan two plays down. Now, depending on if I could throw the ball, 60 yards and get us close to 30, 30, 20 yards to their to the field goal, then the play changes, right? All of a sudden, we could run, we could do something else, right? Similarly, in a startup, in my viewpoint, technology is like that, but also you build a technology to help customers use. So, for example, in our current company here, which we, by the way, we try to keep it stealth as far as possible, but we couldn't.
Yeah, that's gonna be
Um,
hard when you're right here, right now, what we're about to talk about. Go ahead.
so we started off with a very confined location, scope to start with, because we know we wanted to help 3PLs. The scope is very simple. We want to be everything appoint, appointments related. That's all, nothing more. Um, and all of a sudden, we got one carrier, RE Garrison. They said, "Well, we have the same problem. You guys have the integration with McLeod we want to use." We were thinking we're going to get to carriers probably 6 to 8 months down the line. They came in so early. They saw amazing success. All of a sudden, we have a bunch of carriers on our platform now booking their, scheduling their appointments, large ones.
Are you saying the
So
intent was to be talking to brokers and you ended up with carriers? Is that what you're suggesting?
the intent was to first talk with brokers first, because that's where the biggest problem is, at least in my viewpoint, and then talk to carriers probably a year later. But the carriers came in so fast. So now the carriers are using, and they're also telling us, there was one carrier who said, we use hydraulic trucks, and there's this platform you need to connect to. So they're basically helping us grow into areas that we would have grown a year and a half down in our head, right? But that's happening. So, instead of rolling with it, one might say, well, oh, we are not going to do this for the next year. That doesn't work in a startup.
So
If your customers come in, you got to roll with them.
yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's a great point. So take me back to then, I guess, as you started Qt and you thought to yourself, like, we're going to solve the appointment problem that everybody has with AI and automation. What was the initial roadmap generally? And then what did the pivot have to look like? Can you walk through like internally what that looked like, how you thought about it, and then what actual changes you had to make to accommodate? Because I agree wholeheartedly, go where the customer takes you, right? If they're going to walk you down a path to the goal at the end of the rainbow, then let them take you there.
Exactly, right. I mean, so Qt was an interesting idea because often, I spoke to a lot of friends, and everybody said, "Well, Prasad, this is the biggest nagging problem for us. All we're doing is have people manually schedule appointments." Come to know about it, um, I've learned that over 100 million man hours are spent scheduling appointments in our industry. That's a massive expense. So it definitely got my attention. But the real draw for me to Cure, I'm going to come back to your question in 1 second, is um, I spoke to a friend at Coyote. Uh, and he said, "Well, Prasad, I have the same shipper, pickup and delivery, but I know I'm going to get shitty appointments in the middle of the night. So I have to, instead of bidding at $1,000 on that lane, I have to bid at, let's say, $1,500 because I know I can't sell that to a carrier.
Yep.
So, I can't have people manually trying to, it's a foot race. I need some technology. And that's when I thought, well, this is a good problem because it has effect on the shipper side upstream, carrier side downstream. There's so many efficiencies that can come from it. And if you focus on one thing, it can become an exchange.
Were they saying that they can only they have to charge so much because they only get the midnight appointments because they're too slow to get the good appointments, or the shipper only has late appointments? Is this a time thing they're trying to save?
It is. It is. They don't know when these appointments get opened up. The shipper never tells you. Right? You go to their system. They're like, "Yeah, come back and try again." Or they say, "Friday midnight, we're going to get you these appointments released." How many people set the alarm at
Like, I
midnight, right?
care about my business a lot, but am I waking up or staying up till 1 a.m. just to get the 8 a.m. appointment instead of the midnight? Some people would, that's different.
That's actually our famous calling is we tell people your employees are scheduling alarms at midnight to schedule these appointments, and everybody laughs about it and sees the problem,
Yeah,
right?
it's like, enough of that. We can solve that.
Exactly, and this is to me that has been the cue now. So we initial roadmap has been we launch this exchange with some large customers, known bridges, um, and then we go into the carrier side, and then there's more value on the shipper side too, right? So that's how we would expand. So initially when we started talking, that was one aspect. The other aspect was we also don't want it to do manual or semi-automated approach. We wanted to completely automate the whole process. um, So two things we did in our initial discussion. Our president, Tom Curry, real smart guy, and I told him he should be one of your guests too.
Get 'em on.
The guy can talk forever, right? He's
I
got
met
this.
him for a half hour. I wanted to learn about this business you started. So I did chat with him.
Oh,
So we'll get him on in the
so,
future. We'll give it a couple months after your episode, and then we'll bring him back.
thank you. And so he said, "Well, Prasad, you know, we don't want to do the fully automated for these customers." And I didn't like that, but because I wanted a fully automated, like, I mean, you as a customer, 3PL or a carrier should not tell me what appointments you need, because I can tell you, looking at your data, what's the best appointment for you. His point was people don't trust what they don't see, and he was absolutely right about that. So we pivoted to have a semi-automated route, which helped us because 100% of our customers, when we go live with them, the first thing the appointment schedulers do is they come on our website to see if it's actually doing the job or not.
Of course.
That's all it is. I mean, literally, that's all it is. They know what it is, but they just want to come and like see. That's so that was one pivot, and the carrier one that I shared was a big pivot. We're still in our early life, right? I mean, we are about a year or so in our journey. So as we go through, there are going to be so many pivots.
What is the team? Give me because we kind of jumped into Qt, so we didn't transition as well as maybe we could have. But in any case, we're here. We're going to live here for the rest of the show. But let me ask you this: what does the team look like today? Give me kind of a higher level view of the Qt organization. You're about a year old. You're the CEO. Tom Curry is the president. What does the rest of the team look like? And how many customers do you guys have? Have you raised money yet? Are you going to? Walk us through some of kind of the high level stuff.
So we have in our leadership team, uh, myself, Tom, two people, and then we have Kerry Hardnett from she was in our space for many years. She was with MacLeod for many years. She came to run our customer success. To me, this role is probably one of the most ignored and one of the most critical roles in any startup. Head
It,
of your customer success.
so you're saying that you feel that in a lot of software organizations, customer success, the leader, customer success leading is ignored. What is talk to me about
Is ignored because it's an expense, right? I mean, to start with, it's an expense. People don't like um, a really strong leader or more money put into that customer success side of it, because customer success side is primarily doing three things. One is onboarding a customer, working with the customer on how to use the product, on how they use, learning and learning where the gaps are. The third one is the support side would fall them because they can understand where the gaps are.
that? Hmm.
Support in our industry is something that people think expense, so that we'll know. But the second part, where if a customer tells you where your product doesn't work, nobody likes to hear that. In my viewpoint, that is an amazing thing. I mean, it is literally like, who in the world would tell you, test your product 100% and tell you, hey, it breaks here. Why don't you fix it, right? Or I'm using your product this way. Two things that could come after that. Either you tell me, Prasad, that's not how you use this product. I learned that. Or you look at it and say, well, Prasad uses this way. Most of my customers are using my product this way. Why can't I tweak the product to fit the customer? To me, that later part is such a powerful thing, that customer success role feeds right back into your product roadmap. So you can't have a rigid roadmap. So going back to my point on, you don't want to build the product completely, because the customer success feedback is going to come and fill the
Yeah.
gap.
So the point you just made is one that I think I really resonate with, and it's something that I've spent the last. I've never built technology before. I've never been in a business. I mean, Coyote built technology, but that was not. I was so far away, removed from that part of the business. Molo, we didn't build any of our own stuff, and I've spent the last 8 months kind of working with at Mastery with my father, and he's got 700 people building technology, and I'm kind of on the side helping with some sales stuff. I'm not in the business like running it with him, but what I have noticed is there's so much value to having a leadership group, a CEO especially, who really understands the business, because it allows them to have these conversations with customers that are so valuable to both sides. Just like you can sit down with whoever it is at Ari Garrison or one of your big customers, and they might say, "Hey, I think I'm using the product like this." But having someone on your side who understands the business, or in Mastery's case, like my father, who could say, I get that you're using it like this, but have you thought about it like this way? Or vice versa, where they're educating you. But having two sides that are open, honest, and willing to listen and hear each other and share perspective is so valuable in the software business, especially in our space. Because it just does, as you said, especially if you have a roadmap that's not rigid. And I'm curious, because this is something I've seen. Changing a roadmap often is sometimes necessary to support your customers in the best way possible. But what I've learned is that can also be frustrating for the individuals who have to do the actual building and moving and shaking. So can you talk to me a little bit about that, as someone who's now led multiple organizations with, I'm sure, plenty of engineers, of how do you balance the need to support your customers and be flexible and nimble to adjust your roadmap with the desire of engineers to have a very kind of straightforward, like, hey, I know I'm doing this for the next 6 months. This is what I'm building. Stop changing shit for me.
I mean, this is an interesting point. You probably asked them the billion-dollar question here. Um, you never know the right answer on this. Like, I mean, you don't. You have to have a gut check, right? There are two. So when people talk about, I want you to do this, whatever that is, it is truly on two axes. One is on the, let's say, y-axis. You have your product, your overall goal, 10-year goal, right? You who you want to be, right? With Qt, we know we want to be the appointment scheduling platform, exchange, right? Sitting between the shippers, brokers, carriers, and just basically building all these bridges and use AI to really improve that, right? And someone comes to us and says, well, would you do something different? Now, that would take us away from, like, on this scale, it would bring us down away from our goal, right? Where we want to be. The other aspect is, we spoke to a customer. They're already live with us, and he said, well, Prasad, we love this, but we don't need the semi-automated route anymore. We want complete automation. But more than that, I want to get, I want you to tell me what are my best appointments. So he's basically taking us in our direction. So he's asking us to build the AI. Someone asked us, well, Prasad, we actually schedule, um, which is basically going back into our previous question, but um, on the phone, we schedule appointments. We've already built that part. So we're just playing with it, but it's going to add to our roadmap, right? So when you have things that add to your roadmap, towards your direction, you got to take that input, right? Otherwise, what would happen is you're leaving customer unhappy, one thing. Two, you're opening the door for someone else to come and build that part, right? Like, so we know we are everything appointments. So if it's a phone based appointment, yeah, we can handle that. If it's an email, today we built that. But when we first started, we didn't have email as a channel yet. But we quickly got to it because one of our large customers said, I have tons of appointments on that. So let them push you in the general sense of where you want to go, but don't them someone came to me and said, I need you to build a WMS. I said, thank you very much for your faith in me, but there is no way I can I can start that business.
Because it's interesting, because that's WMS, appointments are here. And I'm using hand gestures, remembering that I'm on a podcast that 90% of the people just listen to. So let me start over. Appointments are in one world.
Mhm.
Within that world are phone appointments, portal appointments, and email appointments. I believe those are the three vehicles by which you can schedule. So it does make sense for you to do all three. And they're different. I'm sure they're wildly
Yeah.
different in terms of the resources it takes for you to build and all that. Now, WMS, it's a different world, completely different world. It
Very
ties
true.
in, appointments are certainly a part of that. And I'm sure an appointment system could be part of a WMS in some capacity. But I guess my question is then, how do you know when you're straying too far outside of your designated world? Like, someone might think about this from the perspective of AI is the world. And within the AI world, you have appointments and you have carrier sourcing and you have document retrieval and you have all these other things. So it's like, how do you know what the right world is that you should be living in? And when it's a good or bad idea to extend that into another feature, like some of the other AI stuff that other your competitor, not competitors, but other companies are starting. It's like, why wouldn't Qt get into that as well?
It is, um, it is hard. I mean, that is the reason why you're the founder and CEO, right? Because this, your job is primarily to have that gut feeling. This is taking us far away from our goal. Two, um, you have to constantly tell yourself why you are in this game, right? What is your end result? And I always remind our team. And by the way, earlier I forgot to mention one other person in our team, the head of our technology. He came from Regions Bank. Another friend of mine from high school. Um, so by now
You
you
and all
kind
your
of
high school boys building businesses.
I went with some brilliant minds to school with,
Good.
Uh, so it's important to constantly remind ourselves what is the ultimate goal of our company. Because customers will like when you are successful, and they'll tell you, hey, can you, many times people ask me, can you build me a TMS? And people have been generous and said, well, Prasad, I'll invest money. We'll start a company in TMS. I said, you can't pay me enough to get me in TMS world. You have to know what you really like and what you think you can solve. Right? So, and you have to be absolutely focused and disciplined about that. If you're not disciplined about that, you lose your strategic advantage. And I'm going to jump back into my previous slide. And in the earlier days of Trucker Tools, we stuck to app-based tracking, and we didn't, venture into other spaces, and that helped us build that driver base that no one could compete with us again, because people couldn't get into the app-based tracking at all, and the app gave us two-way communication with the driver, with the load and everything. So you know your strategy in your head, right? It's like, end of the day, as a CEO or a founder, you are the one playing that game, right? You're making the play call, and you're responsible for everything. So while you hear a lot of things, and somebody might have done this, somebody might have done that, you would have to stick to your limits. I mean, there is no two ways about it. A lot of businesses fail because, I mean, today I see a lot of startups saying, oh, we are this, we do that. And I'm thinking, how can they sell this if they do 10 things to a customer, and customer can themselves can't remember this company as a, this is the only thing these guys do better.
Yeah, I'm. This is something I'm thinking a lot about, and I don't have the answer. I do think having a clear identity that people know you for is valuable, right?
Mhm.
Because there are going to be. It's definitely in the hundreds. It might be thousands of startups in the next 12 months that are focused on AI in our space. You will have 100 that do appointments competing with you. You will have 100 doing carrier sourcing, inbound call stuff. You'll have 100 doing the documents and whatnot. And I just, it's going to be a messy field. I guess a question I have for you, because how many total people are on the Q'd team today?
We are over 10 people, a little less than 15.
So,
We're still very small. We Go ahead.
no, that's sorry. I didn't mean to. I was going to lead that into the question. It feels like a lot of it feels like it's not. I want to be careful with my words here because I'm not thinking of the word easy, but it feels like it doesn't take a ton of resources to build an AI solution in this space, whether it's for appointments or for inbound calls or whatever it may be. It takes someone who knows the business. It takes a couple engineers, and that's kind of it. And it's not to say that's easy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But what I am saying is it feels like low barriers to entry. And I'm curious, like, how does one get staying power and build a defensible solution in a space that's going to have a lot of attention to it and doesn't take a ton of resources to build a solution? Like, is there a risk or concern that we get to a place where there's 40 of these companies who are all saying I can do it for 5 cents a load because that's just the only way I get the business is if I'm the basically inexpensive.
The last part that you said, A lot of these entrants, without any focus, will do that to the market. They'll consistently, because they have to survive, right? I mean, I'm in the order entry. I'm in something else. I'm building your TMS, and I'm building your shipper's TMS, and I can do something else. Not having a clear go-to-market strategy gets all murkier. And those startups, I mean, I hope they see that before they go bankrupt or go belly up. Um, so you have to start with, like, when I told you we started with the 3PL market. And even within the 3PL market, we started with the top 100 3PLs and carriers. So that we have a majority of those customers already onboarded today.
You
Um,
have a majority of the top 100?
yes.
You have over 50 of the top 100 brokers already signed up with
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. That's valuable. That's a first to market. That's big.
Yeah.
You're
So
entrenched.
talk on word, yeah.
Let me get some
We
advisor
kept
shares. Just kidding. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's a good comment. So you need to have the big players signed up first because they would know what the market is going, where the market is going. That's extremely important. Two, you're going to get pulled in different directions, but you have to stay. And to go back to your question on the AI side, AI entry barriers are not that much, but to build a complete solution with a good customer server, I mean success, the overall strategy, everything, that's where the expense is going to be. I mean, we've raised, me and a bunch of my friends, we put money in this. We did a small round. We, you know, we raised almost double what we wanted to raise. Because it's a good way, right? I mean, good way. Everybody
Yeah.
wanted to put money in. It is a good group of friends. Um, so, but also, the expense comes in when you're trying to build a complete solution as opposed to an entry point. So your point on AI is absolutely dead on. It's you can buy a third party AI software, right? And try to build something quickly. But then the moment you have to make it complete and provide it as a professional service, it's going to cost you more. And you can do that um, across 10 different things and still float the startup. That's going to hurt them.
What have been the kind of biggest surprises for you as you've walked into the AI space and built a solution? You know, you're a year into it with Qt. I'm curious what, in both a positive and a negative, or maybe not even negative, but just like kind of something you didn't expect. What's something you've kind of learned in the last year with respect to AI that surprised you?
AI is a very powerful tool, but in my viewpoint, I think AI got more attention than it truly deserves.
Okay, why?
The reason I say that is everybody thinks AI is going to change everything, but no, right? I mean, we've been using AI for all these years, various versions of AI, right? Now the generative AI came up, and there is a newer version of that AI coming up. But the technology is always going to be something new, right? Um, AI works in when you can feed enough data to train the algorithms. Just building the algorithms doesn't solve the problem. And just because AI is so smart, um, you cannot mimic a human relationship with the AI. So with the audio calls, I mean, like you mentioned about the voice calls, right? I mean, we have that. It sounds absolutely like a human person. I actually thought that was just a test case human on the other end. That's how real it was. Um, but having said that, the overall in our freight industry, the human connections are such a powerful thing because you're trusting someone that they'll pick up the load as they say and deliver on time. Now, the cost of falling off of that load. So I'll give you a good example. You give a load to a carrier to pick up the load on Monday morning in Chicago. The carrier, for whatever reason, doesn't want to show up. Right? They got another load. The last minute, they can go on, move, do other things because there are so many brokers out there, so many shippers out there. The carrier can burn that bridge with you and not worry about, that credibility. On the other hand, now you're left with, let's imagine your technology company says, well, Andrew, I'm going to pay you back your monthly fee, which is $100 or $50. You're like, I don't care. I have a load I need to put it in the store to sell. And imagine if that's right before your Thanksgiving weekend, you miss that opportunity. Right? As a shipper, you're furious. So the next time you have a load, you're only going to give it to someone you trust will not drop like that. So the technology can only do so much, can help us be better, but cannot help us build that relationship with the person, with the customer. Right? That is the part. If imagine you have an AI solution for customer success, and on the phone, how do you try ask a question to a customer about something that they themselves don't know yet in their head? You're talking about a product, and you'll say, well, what happens this way? How do you use our product? Do you think we should build that feature in our product or not? That whole conversation cannot be a technology doing it with a customer. So,
I agree with that. And with respect to your first example, I get what you're saying. I don't think we'll get to a place where a brokerage will be relating to a customer and only using AI to source and execute the load, right?
mhm.
Because you can't, there needs to be a last line of defense that is human, that is orchestrating, like, hey, this is a problem. Thanksgiving's coming up. We're going to lose this customer if we don't pick up this load in the next 2 hours. And, but that person, like, you said it's not like everything's going to change. If we look at appointments, you said 100 million man hours a year are spent scheduling appointments. Let me ask you this. If you do your job right, will there be any hours spent on appointments, man hours?
Not much, not much. But the people will be doing exceptions, right? I mean, we schedule a lot of appointments. They come back with exceptions. Oh, there is a carrier already on that load. The shipper needs to release that carrier. Things like that. There's going to be humans talking about it. But more importantly, what the humans will be doing is they're going to analyze our data or the reports we give them, go back to the shippers and say, going back to our original example, and telling the shipper, you don't have enough appointments during daytime at this location. I need you to open up if you want me to bid lower rate than this.
Yeah.
That's the information that they have to have. And we are basically feeding that. Right?
Yeah, it feels like where we're going to get to, where in any role that AI is going to have a meaningful role, it feels like the evolution will be for the human. The evolution will be from the active executor to the maintenance and maintainer. And I will go from my job is to schedule 50 appointments a day for my 5 customers to my job is to oversee the product that schedules 50 loads a day. And when there are exceptions, I step in to accommodate. And in my opinion, if that's done effectively, organizations that once had 200 customer operations people will only need 20, 30, 40. I don't know that I don't know that it's really it matters a ton that we get the number right here, if it's 10%, 15%, 20%, but the point I'm making is it's a fraction. It's a small percent of the total in terms of the human capital organizations will need for things like appointments.
You're right. And two, I would also look at this problem slightly different because human people don't get excited. I mean, you can go to colleges, college graduates, and say, hey, I want you to come and work for me. All you're going to be doing is from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. go on all these portals and schedule appointments for me. They're not going to get excited. It's almost like, brain dead at that point, right? As opposed to, if you can bring them in and say, I want you to understand this and understand, have a relationship with the shipper and talk about where our choke points are, eliminate the choke point. You are the appointments smooth, or process manager. Imagine that job would be better for them. You're respecting as a human, you're respecting them better, right?
Yeah.
Today, unfortunately, there is no other way to do this job other than have people manually do it.
Yep.
And they do an amazing job. But if you talk to some of these people, they're all going to move into higher up roles, do a much better value add to us. And if 10 people in your organization are adding more value to your organization is adding more value to our overall supply chain. So that is, in my head, that is an overall win for all of us.
100%. So in 5 years, paint me a picture of what queued looks like in the logistics landscape.
In my head, the goal I have is to be appointments everything, right? Everything related to appointments in our space. Um, Not just help brokers and carriers, but also help shippers, because I think we need to really go and have a candid conversation with some of these shippers that don't have a good logistics or scheduling systems on their side, helping them schedule their dock operations. Um, and really focus on eliminating the detention, right? If we do this job right, eventually the detention should go away or get really minimal. Um, Hence, there's going to be more streamline, efficiencies that get out of this. Now, in 5 years, we want to own the space. And this. I told our team, and all our team is fully focused on. We don't want any competition. We don't want someone else coming in our space. And to do that, we have to do a great job. Right? That's how we see ourselves owning it. So competition gets deterred. Our customers don't feel like they have to change, because if we're doing a good job, great job, why would they leave us, right? And that's our focus. And everything else is noise. Um,
So it's interesting to me because I didn't think about this until just now as you were painting that picture, which I appreciate you doing. I think it's one thing to become the appointment solution. And when I say one thing, I mean it's a meaningful success, like very, very meaningful. If in 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, when I think appointments, I think queued, and every broker and carrier, like, appointments are scheduled through queued. That would be a resounding success for the business, and I think that would be a home run, $1 billion business. Great, and that solves a big problem. The next iteration of that, though, is kind of what you're alluding to, which is now once you've got all the data and you've got all the players and all the appointments and all the trucks, how do you optimize? How do you reduce detention? Can you, at that point, you're kind of changing the game a little bit? Like, there's a world where you're
yes.
going to have to change the way that appointments are scheduled. And not just the way, and what I mean by that is not that an operations rep is currently calling and scheduling or sending an email and now it's AI. I'm saying, like, the whole process by which a shipper has their load scheduled might need to change, or like there's an are you seeing what I'm seeing in terms of there's a next evolution here?
There is a big next evolution. So once we get that to that point in, let's say, 5 years or less, um, I like it to be less than 5 years.
Do
At
it in two.
startup, I want everything
Do it in
yesterday.
two. You won't.
Right. So what we could build on top of that is, there are two plugs. And so one is coming from carriers and brokers scheduling appointments and bringing their trucks right to a dock. Then the whole warehouse management happening. Right. So so that the next truck takes that load and gets you the freight, that 1 day delivery, 2 day delivery that Amazon does for all of us, right? So warehouses are building these algorithms to really streamline every load that is coming to their facility. They can flag it as, hey, this has got a highest priority, and I need it to come in and go, creating these pathways, right? We need to plug to them in real time so that as the loads are moving, we're already working on some of it. So I'm going to be cautious, and because I don't want our team to be yelling at me for saying more than I should. So we in real time we can change a lot of these appointments,
Yeah,
this
dynamic,
the
creating a
process
dynamic appointment process.
exactly where the trucks are going. But more importantly, the way I see is us plugging directly into warehouse management. So eventually, their algorithms get the data from us to be better, and as they get better, we get better with our appointments because they're opening up those appointments for us. So it's a dance. It's like a tandem dance. We're going to be doing with them. The better we understand each other, the better the dance is going to be.
Very cool. Well, I won't press you further because I can tell I'm getting into the deep, dark secrets you're not yet ready to share, which is part of the challenge of this show is you want depth, but like you don't want to give away, too much. But in any case, I'm curious from your perspective, looking at our industry, there's so much opportunity still for innovation coming. And the way that technology is advancing, I think it's creating even more opportunity. So if you take your appointments hat off for a second, where do you still see the biggest opportunity for innovation?
Um, there, my knowledge is limited, Andrew. I'm going to say this. I know um, from the shipper side to carrier side. That's once the load leaves the shipper side, that's where my knowledge starts, and then it goes through carrier full cycle. Um, in that space, I strongly believe there's still we're hearing about a lot of optimization on the whole the bidding process, all of it, the rates and all. Even today, isn't it surprising that we don't have a real time ticker price for freight? Like think about this is 2024, and back many moons ago, as we spoke about GetLoaded, we used to look at the last 30 days of rates and tell people, hey, the lane going from Chicago to Atlanta, this is the average rate, and people use that rate to bid on that road, and that was we're more or less like that still. 20 years, 25 years later.
Yeah.
Um, in my viewpoint, I think we need to have a ticker price. I've said this to many friends, including Craig Fuller, who has Sonar. I told him, I said, Craig, we got to have a ticker price. Um, the reason is, I think at this point of time, what is the rate going from Chicago to Atlanta if I have to pick up the road tomorrow morning? Let's say something got to happen. There is opportunity for that to have. And I don't want anyone else to work on it other than us. Um, just a footnote. And no, we're not getting it yet, but we'll see. Um, um, there are also other areas of inefficiencies on invoicing side, which there are some companies that are addressing. Instead of going on this bandwagon of AI, if people can focus on silos, like okay, there is procurement, there's scheduling, there's carrier coverage, carrier vetting, carrier coverage, then the feedback as the channels or the silos. There are more solutions to be picked, in my viewpoint, as opposed to we get, I don't know, for lack of um, understanding, or is it a FOMO that we get on these bandwagons of blockchain is going to revolutionize that our industry. Now AI is going to take over this, something else is going to take over that. And 2 years later, nothing happens.
I'm with you on the blockchain. I never got on that.
Yeah, it was a perfect solution for our industry, but we know it's never going to happen. And that's the thing, right? I mean, we got to, because everybody wants to do things that would benefit their business in a little bit of a zero sum, right? I mean, if one carrier gets a load, the other carrier didn't get that load. Right? That's not a bad thing, but that's the reality of it.
Well, listen, this has been great. I appreciate having you come on the show with me and sharing all your wisdom with us and all the things from your time at GetLoaded. Shout out GetLoaded to your time at TruckerTools and now in your third act here, second entrepreneurial act, I suppose, with Qt. It's clear you've built a great business and even in the early stages. So I'm excited to follow along and I'm sure our audience is as well. So thank you so much. Any parting words, any words of wisdom you want to leave our audience with?
First, Andrew, thank you very much for having me on this show. You can see I'm very excited in my answers, so I couldn't shut up.
You did great.
You've been doing this very well. So first and foremost thing, I as you're thinking about doing other things, I think you're bringing audience here, leaders here in our space is amazing thing. Because me as one of your audience, I enjoy listening to your podcasts. I enjoy listening to your guests. They have so much to share. My two things I wanted to say. One is I want to thank everyone who has supported me all through this journey. This journey, which is easy for me to um, rave and talk about, wouldn't be possible with numerous people carrying me on their shoulders. Whether it's my customers, amazing group of customers at TruckerTools, GetLoaded, and now Qt, whether it's the investor group, good friends group, they put money in anything that I'm doing now, which is amazing and um, a little bit worrisome for me. The third is our team, and you know it's great to have team that can walk through the fire. They have done it numerous times, and you and I will spoke about this. As a founder, you might have a great dream, and you want people to follow that. And time and again, these that group came and walked through the fire to get us there. Without these three groups and other friends within the industry, they have just helped me for no good reason. They just helped me because I'm sure they loved something, right? Um, I'm so grateful to all of these people. I'm so grateful. You know, that gives me one parting advice to anyone who's dreaming in our space. Um, don't worry about who you are, whether you have any knowledge in this space or not, or um, whether your idea might be big or small. Doesn't matter. But if you are brave enough to dream, follow through your dream, um, and be focused. Don't get carried away. Don't get carried away. Be grounded. This is an industry that has made so many great leaders. They'll carry you. Um, you know, all they ask in return is don't be arrogant and don't be think that you know everything, because we don't know everything. At the end of the day, and you've been part of a few startups and this. You've been a big success story. Yet I would think you would say, hey, I don't know some of these parts of supply chain, right? So focus is the only way to success. There are no two ways.
Really well said. You said they gave you money for no good reason. I could say in the answer you just gave, there was plenty of good reason. There's humility, there's wisdom, there's a lot there. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm sure our audience greatly appreciates it. Maybe you get a couple more customers out of it. And to everyone else, we'll see you next week. Thank you.